All right, welcome to today's explainer. We're jumping right into an absolutely incredible piece of ancient poetry that maps out one of the most intense psychological and emotional journeys you can imagine, Psalm 63. Whether you study history or you just know what it feels like to be completely exhausted and running on empty, this text is a literal masterclass in surviving the extremes of desperation. As in a dry and weary land where there is no water, picture that for a second. We're plunging immediately into a harsh, desperate setting. The author isn't just having a rough afternoon, they're in the literal and metaphorical wilderness. Survival is completely on the line here. The heat is oppressive, the resources are zero, and the exhaustion, it's total. Looking at our source document for this explainer, the English Standard Version of Psalm 63, the superscript gives us our exact coordinates right out of the gate. A psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah. We're going to break down how the author uses these specific 11 verses to pull himself, and really us as the reader, out of that deadly desert and into a place of supreme confidence. Section 1. The wilderness setting, a thirsting soul. Just listen to the visceral language in verse 1. My soul thirsts for you, my flesh faints for you. This isn't just a passing feeling, you know? The author is mapping a deep spiritual and emotional longing directly onto his biology. His earnest seeking is literally causing his physical body to fail and faint. The boundary between the spirit and the body completely dissolves here in the heat of the wilderness. And this actually illustrates a really surprising fact about ancient poetry. Notice how physical anatomy is used to map out this entire spiritual journey. We don't just have abstract thoughts floating around. We've got the soul thirsting, flesh fainting, joyful lips, hands lifted up. Every single part of the anatomy is engaged in this struggle. It's like the human body is the very canvas used to paint this picture of survival. Section 2, Praise and Satisfaction, the Midnight Feast. Okay, so notice the extreme juxtaposition of imagery here. We go from the literal starvation and dehydration of a dry and weary land in verse 1, right to verse 5, satisfied as with fat and rich food. It kind of gives you whiplash. The author yanks us from a barren desert into a metaphorical, luxurious banquet. Nothing about his physical location has actually changed. His internal reality just shifted from total famine to an absolute feast. So how does he make that massive mental leap? Well, it happens right here in verse 3, which is the emotional pivot of the entire poem. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. I mean, wow. He's in a life or death survival situation, yet he declares that this steadfast love completely surpasses his basic human need to simply survive. Life itself takes a back seat. And that realization, that's exactly what unlocks the banquet. Then, moving into verses 6 and 7, the setting shifts entirely. We are no longer in the blazing, blinding heat of the daytime desert. The poem moves into introspective, peaceful meditation. The author is remembering upon his bed, meditating in the watches of the night. Acknowledging past help gives him the security to just sing for joy in the shadow of wings. The chaos of the wilderness has been fully replaced by the quiet, protected stillness of the night. Section 3. Protection and Justice, the Shadow and the Sword. Right before the storm hits, we get this beautiful, incredibly grounding image in verse 8. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. It's a perfect picture of mutual tension. He is actively clinging, desperate for grip, while a stronger, dominant right hand is actively supporting and upholding him so he doesn't fall. It's the ultimate picture of absolute security. But then, bam, the tone just violently fractures. Look at this intensely visceral quote from verse 10. Talking about those seeking to destroy his life, he says, they shall be given over to the power of the sword, they shall be a portion for jackals. We literally go from resting safely in the shadow of wings directly to bodies being left on a battlefield for wild scavengers. It is a fierce, almost shocking use of poetic style to describe final justice. The crucial takeaway here is how unbelievably fast the author moves between these emotional states, going from feeling the gentle, comforting shadow of protective wings to visualizing the brutal, bloody downfall of his enemies in a fraction of a second. It really tells us a lot about the ancient mindset. Peace and violent justice absolutely were not mutually exclusive. In fact, one was often seen as the absolute prerequisite for the other. And look at how neatly the poem resolves this whole thing. We see the definitive, dark fate of the enemies, going down to the depths, given to the sword, becoming a portion for jackals, complete eradication. But on the flip side, we have the triumphant resolution in verse 11. The king shall rejoice, those who swear by him shall exult, and the mouths of liars will be permanently stopped. It's an airtight, perfectly balanced conclusion where cosmic order is fully restored. Which brings us to the core mystery of this incredible text, and the big question I want to leave you with in today's explainer. How does a mere change in perspective, rather than any change in physical circumstance, shift a fainting, thirsty wanderer into a victorious, rejoicing king? He started and ended the poem in the exact same dry wilderness, but spiritually, the guy traveled universes. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, keep exploring the texts that shape the human soul.